Okay. We are live. Is my Geki and my camera enough? Did I just turn it? There we go. That's a good angle for Nageki. Hello. It's actually like this. I'll just type it in the chat. But I'm sure he says hi too. How are you? Hello. How are you? That's okay. Doing okay. It's honestly been a little bit of a off mental health day today here, but I hope that the book will cheer me up, or at least streaming, talking to you guys, exploring the book with you. I don't know if this is necessarily a feel-good book, but hello. Yeah. Let me grab the book and see. I hadn't placed my marker for a place to potentially stop yet, so okay. Place a marker at a point to potentially stop, and we can start if you guys are ready. If you're reading along and you have a copy of the book, we are starting from the section titled Fire, which on this copy of the book is page 71. Just let me know if you're ready to go. Cool. Alright. She gasped. The sensations were sudden. The noise... Oh, Siri, I wasn't talking to you. I'm sorry about that. The sensations were sudden. The noise and the water. She had her mouth open and she choked. The tang and sting of salt water. She tried to touch her feet on the bottom of the pool, but she was out of her depth, so she quickly slipped into breaststroke mode. A swimming pool, but a saltwater one, outdoor, beside the ocean, carved seemingly out of the rock that jutted out of the coastline. She could see the actual ocean just beyond. There was sunshine overhead. The water was cool, but given the heat of the air above her, the cool was welcome. Once upon a time, she had been the best 14-year-old female swimmer in Bedfordshire. She had won 2 races in her age category at the National Junior Swimming Championships. Freestyle 400 meters, freestyle 200 meters. Her dad had driven her every day to the local pool, sometimes before school as well as after. But then, while her brother rocked out on his guitar to Nirvana, she traded lengths for scales and taught herself how to play not just, Chopin? I think it was Chopin? Not just Chopin, but classics like Let It Be and Rainy Days and Mondays. She also began, before the labyrinths were even a figment of her brother's imagination, to compose her own music. No, it's not Chopin. That's not how you pronounce it. Yeah, so Chopin, that was right. Okay. Yeah, it's because I pronounced it that way before, but then I learned that that was not the proper pronunciation, so it's okay, no worries. But she hadn't really gone off swimming, just the pressure around it. She reached the side of the pool, stopped, and looked around. She could see a beach at a lower level in the distance, curving around in a semicircle to welcome the sea lapping on its sand. Beyond the beach, inland, a stretch of grass, a park complete with palm trees and distant dog walkers. Beyond that, houses and low-rise apartment blocks, and traffic sliding by on a road. She'd seen pictures of Byron Bay, and it didn't look quite like this. This place, wherever it was, seemed a little more built up. Still surferish, but also urban. Turning her attention back to the pool, she noticed a man smile at her as he adjusted his goggles. Did she know this man? Would she welcome this smile in this life? Having no idea, she offered the smallest of polite smiles in return. She felt like a tourist with an unfamiliar currency, not knowing how much to tip. Then, an elderly woman in a swimming cap smiled at her as she glided through the water towards her. "Morning, Nora," she said, not breaking her stride. It was a greeting that suggested Nora was a regular here. "Morning," said Nora. She stared out at the ocean to avoid any awkward chatting. A flock of morning surfers, speck-sized, swam on their boards to greet large sapphire blue waves. This was a promising start to her Australian life. She stared at her watch. It was a bright orange, cheap-looking Casio. A happy-looking watch, suggestive, she hoped, of a happy-feeling life. It was just after 9 a.m. here. Next to her watch was a plastic wristband with a key on it. So, this was her morning ritual here, in an outdoor swimming pool beside a beach. She wondered if she was here alone. She scanned the pool, hopefully for any sign of Izzy, but none was there. She swam some more. The thing she had once loved about swimming was the disappearing. In the water, her focus had been so pure that she thought of nothing else. Any school or home worries vanished. The art of swimming, she supposed like any art, was about purity. The more focused you were on the activity, the less focused you were on everything else. You kind of stopped being you and became the thing you were doing. But it was hard to stay focused when Nora noticed her arms and chest ached. She sensed it had been a long swim, and was probably time to get out of the swimming pool. She saw a sign, Bronte Beach Swimming Pool. She vaguely remembered Dan, who had been to Australia in his gap year, talking about this place, and the name had stuck, Bronte Beach, because it was easy to remember. Jane Eyre on a surfboard. Haha. But here was confirmation of her doubt. Bronte Beach was in Sydney, but it most definitely wasn't a part of Byron Bay. So that meant one of two things. Either Izzy, in this life, wasn't in Byron Bay, or Nora wasn't with Izzy. She noticed she was tanned, a mild caramel all over. Of course, the trouble was she didn't know where her clothes were, but then she remembered the plastic wristband with a key on it. 57. Her locker was 57. So she found the changing rooms and opened the squat square locker and saw her taste in clothes, as well as watches, was more colorful in this life. She had a t-shirt with a pineapple print on it, a whole cornucopia of pineapples, and pink-purple denim shorts, and slip-on check pumps. What am I, she wondered, a children's TV presenter? Sunblock, hibiscus-tinted lip balm, no other makeup as such. As she pulled on her t-shirt, she noticed a couple of marks on her arm. She wondered momentarily if they... I'm gonna skip this part. It is a little sensitive. Or, I don't know. There was also a tattoo just below her shoulder. A phoenix and flames. It was a terrible tattoo. In this life, she clearly had no taste. But since when did taste have anything to do with happiness? She dressed and pulled out a phone from her shorts pocket. This was an older model than in her married and living in a pub life. Luckily, a thumb reading was enough to unlock it. She left the changing rooms and walked along the beachside path. It was a warm day. Maybe life was automatically better when the sun shone so confidently in April. Everything seemed more vivid, more colorful, and alive than it had done in England. And now I know that... I know I shouldn't. It's a slightly sensitive subject. Not for me, but I just felt... I don't know, I didn't know how to approach it, so I just walked over it. But in the future, maybe I won't, because it's supposed to be a reading, and there are going to be people in here who don't have the copy of the book listening along. So I guess I'll figure out how to manage that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. But yeah, so I'll add that to our trigger warnings as well in when they're being posted on YouTube and such. And then also, I think in future mentions of in future posts preceding the stream. Just as further warning, about other topics discussed. She left the changing rooms and walked along a beachside path. It was a warm day. Maybe life was automatically better when the sun shone so confidently in April. Everything seemed more vivid, more colorful and alive than it had done in England. She saw a parrot, a sky blue and banana yellow macaw, perched on the top of a bench, perched on the top of a bench, being photographed by a couple of tourists. A surfy-looking cyclist passed by holding an orange smoothie, smiling and literally saying, "G'day." This was most definitely not Bedford. Nora noticed something was happening to her face. Could she be? Smiling. And naturally, not just because someone expected her to. Then she noted a piece of graffiti on a low wall which said, "The world is on fire," and another that said, "One Earth equals one chance," and her smile faded. After all, a different life didn't mean a different planet. She had no idea where she lived or what she did or where she was meant to be heading after the swimming pool, but there was something quite freeing about that. to be existing without any expectation, even her own. As she walked, she Googled her own name and added Sydney to see if it brought up anything. Before she scanned the results, she glanced up and noticed a man walking on the path towards her, smiling. A short, tanned man with kind eyes and long, thinning hair and a loose ponytail with a shirt that wasn't buttoned correctly. "Hey, Nora." "Hey," she said, trying not to sound confused. "What time you start today?" She could answer. How could she answer that? Oh, crap! I've totally forgotten. He laughed, a little laugh of recognition, as if her forgetting was quite in character. "I saw it on the rota. I think it might be 11. 11 a.m.? Kind Eyes laughed. "What have you been smoking? I want some." "Ha, nothing," she said stiffly. "I've not been smoking anything. I just skipped breakfast." "Well, see you this Arvo." "Yes, at the place. Where is it again?" He laughed frowningly and kept walking. Maybe she worked on a whale sightseeing cruise that operated out of Sydney. Maybe Izzy did too. Nora had no idea where she or they lived, and nothing was coming up on Google, but away from the ocean seemed the right direction. Maybe she was very local. Maybe she had walked here. Maybe one of the bikes she saw locked up outside the pool cafe had been hers. She rummaged in her tiny clasp wallet and felt her pockets for a key, but there was only a house key, no car keys, no bike keys. So it was a bus or by foot. The house key had no information on it at all, so she sat on a bench while the sun beating hard on the back of her neck, and checked her texts. There were names of people she didn't recognize: Amy, Rodri, Bella, Lucy P. Kamala. Lucy P. Probably Lucy P. Kamala. Luke, Lucy M. Who are these people? And a rather unhelpful contact titled simply "Work." And there was only one recent message from work, and it said, "Where are you?" There was one name she recognized: Dan. Her heart sank as she clicked on his most recent message. "Hey, Nor, hope Oz is treating you well. This is going to sound either corny or creepy, but I am going to go all out and tell you. I had a dream the other night about our pub. It was such a good dream. We were so happy. Anyway, ignore the weirdness. The point of this is to say, guess where I'm going in May? Australia! First time in over a decade. I'm coming with work. I'm working with MCA. Would be great to catch up, even for a coffee if you're around. D. X." It was so strange she almost laughed, but she coughed instead. Maybe she wasn't quite so fit in this life now that she thought about it. She wondered how many Dans there were in the world, dreaming of things they would hate if they actually got them, and how many were pushing other people into their delusional idea of happiness. Instagram seemed to be the only social media she had here, and she only seemed to post pictures of poems on it. She took a moment to read one. Fire, every part of her that changed, that got scraped off, because of schoolyard laughter, or the advice of grown-ups, long gone, and the pain of friends, already dead. She collected those bits off the floor, like wood shavings, and she made them into fuel, into fire, and burned, bright enough to see forever. This was troubling, but it was, after all, just a poem. Scrolling through some emails, she found one to Charlotte. Cladaban. Wait, Cladaban? No. This is a weird word, and I can tell that it has a strange pronunciation. It was a bench by the beach. It is Ceilidh. Yeah. Ceilidh? It sounds like it's an Irish word. Let me see if I can get a pronunciation check on it. Pronunciation. I'm just looking it up over here. Hold on. Oh, it's like Kaylee. Irish is so... Oh, it's Scotland, actually. Scottish? Why do they do this? Hold on. Let me see. Sounds like Kaylee. Yeah, hold on. We're gonna listen to a pronunciation of it.
We're going to be looking at her
Oh, just give me the...
origin as well, so make sure to stay tuned. How do you pronounce it? Kaylee.
Yeah, just Kaylee. Okay. Alright. So needlessly confusing. Now, I'm sure there's rhyme and reason to it. I just don't know it. Yeah. A Kaylee band flautist with earthy humor who'd been Nora's only friend at string theory before she had moved back up to Scotland. Hey, Charles. Hey, Charles. Hope all is fine and dandy. Pleased the birthday due went well. Sorry I couldn't be there. All is well and... Oh, Charles, rather, instead of Charles. Charlotte. Charles. Hi, Charles. Hope it was fine and dandy. Pleased the birthday due went well. Sorry I couldn't be there. All is well in sunny Sydney. Have finally moved into the new place. It's right near Bronte Beach. Beautiful. Lots of neighborhood cafes and charm. I also have a new job. I go swimming in a saltwater pool every morning and every... Alright, car. Because it's summer, everybody thinks they need to bring out their loud cars. I go swimming in a saltwater pool every morning, and every evening I drink a glass of Australian wine and sunshine. Life is good. Address is 229 Darling Street, Bronte, NSW 2024, Australia, Nora, X. Something was rotten. The tone of vague, distant perkiness as if writing to a long-lost aunt. The lots of neighborhood cafes and charm as though it was a TripAdvisor review. She didn't speak to Charlotte or indeed anyone like that. There was also no mention of Izzy. I finally moved into the new place. What was that we have or I have? Charlotte knew of Izzy. Why not mention her? She would soon find out. Indeed, 20 minutes later she was standing in the hallway of her apartment staring at 4 bags of rubbish that needed taking out. The living room looked small and depressing, the sofa tatty and old. The place smelt slightly moldy. There was a poster on the wall for the video game Angel, and a vape pen on a coffee table, with a marijuana leaf sticker on it. A woman was staring at a screen, shooting zombies in the head. The woman had short blue hair, and for a moment Nora thought it might be Izzy. Hi, Nora said. The woman turned. She was not Izzy. She had sleepy eyes and a vacant expression, as if the zombies she was shooting had slightly infected her. She was probably a perfectly decent person, but she was not anyone Nora had ever seen in her life. She smiled. Hey, how's that new poem coming along? Oh, yeah, it's coming along really well. Thanks. Nora walked around the flat in a bit of a daze. She opened a door at random and realized it was the bathroom. She didn't need the toilet, but she needed a second to think. So she shut the door and washed her hands and stared at the water spiral down the plug hole the wrong way. She glanced at the shower. The dull yellow curtain was dirty in a vague student house kind of way. That's what this place reminded her of, a student house. She was 35 and in this life, living like a student. She saw some antidepressants, fluoxetine, beside the basin, and picked up the box. She read prescription for N, seed, at the top of the label. She looked down at her arm and saw the scars again. It was weird to have your own body offer clues to a mystery. There was a magazine on the floor next to the bin, National Geographic, the one with the black hole on its cover that she had been reading in another life, on the other side of the world, only yesterday. She sensed it was her magazine, given she had always liked reading it and had been known, even in recent times, to buy it on the occasional spontaneous whim, as no online version ever did the photos justice. She remembered being 11 years old and looking at the photos of Svalbard, the Norwegian archipelago and the Arctic, in her dad's copy. It had looked so vast and desolate and powerful, and she had wondered what it would have been like to be among it, like the scientist explorers in the article, spending their summer doing some kind of geological research. She cut out the pictures and they ended up in the pinboard in her bedroom. And for many years, at school, she had tried hard at science and geography just so she could be like the scientists in the article and spend her summers among frozen mountains and fjords as puffins flew overhead. But after her dad died, and after reading Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, she decided that A, Philosophy seemed to be the only subject that matched her sudden inward intensity, and B, she wanted to be a rock star more than a scientist anyway. After leaving the bedroom, she returned to her mysterious flatmate. She sat on the sofa, and waited for a few moments, watching. The woman's avatar got shot in the head. "Piss off, you zombie fuckface!" The woman snarled happily at the screen. Oh, happily. Okay. She picked up the vape pen. Nora wondered how she knew this woman. She was assuming they were flatmates. "I've been thinking about what you said." "What did I say?" Nora asked. "About doing some cat sitting. You know, you wanted to look after the cat." "Oh, yeah, sure. I remember." "Bad fucking idea, man." "Really?" "Cats." "What about them?" "They've got a parasite, toxoplus something." Nora knew this. She had known this since she was a teen doing her work experience at Bedford Animal Rescue Center. Toxoplasmosis. That's it. Well, I was listening to this podcast, right? And there's this theory that this international group of billionaires infected the cats with it so they can take over the world by making humans dumber and dumber. I mean, think about it. There are cats everywhere. I was talking to Jared about this, and Jared said, "Jojo, what are you smoking?" And I was like, "The stuff you gave me." And he said, "Yeah, I know." Then he told me about the grasshoppers. Grasshoppers? "Yeah, did you hear about the grasshoppers?" Jojo asked. "What about them?" They were all killing themselves. Because this parasitic worm grows inside them to become like a full-grown aquatic creature. And as it grows, it takes over the brain function of the grasshopper. So the grasshopper thinks, "Hey, I really like the water." And so they dive bomb into the water and die. And it's happening all the time. Google it. Google grasshopper suicide. Anyway, the point is, the elites are killing us via cats, and so you shouldn't be near them. Nora couldn't help thinking how different this life was to her imagined version of it. She had pictured herself and Izzy on a boat near Byron Bay, marveling at the magnificence of humpback whales, and yet she was here in a small, pot-scented apartment in Sydney, with a conspiracy theorist as a flatmate who wouldn't even let her near a cat. Yeah. What happened to Izzy? Nora realized she had just asked the question out loud. Jojo looked confused. "Izzy? Your old friend Izzy?" "Yeah." "The one who died?" The words came so fast Nora could hardly absorb them. What? "The car crash girl?" "What?" Jojo looked confused as curls of smoke whipped across her face. "You okay, Nora?" She held up the joint. "Want a toke?" "No. I'm okay, thanks." Jojo chuckled. "Makes a change." Nora grabbed her phone, went online, typed Isabel Hirsch into the search box, then clicked news. There it was. A headline. Above a picture of Izzy's tanned face, smiling. "British woman killed in NSW road collision." A woman, 33, was killed and 3 people hospitalized south of Coffs Harbour last night when the woman's Toyota Corolla collided with a car traveling in the opposite direction on the Pacific Highway. The female driver, identified as British citizen Isabel Hirsch, died at the scene of the accident just before 9 p.m. She was the only person in the Toyota. According to her flatmate Nora Seed, Isabel had been driving from Brisbane back to Byron Bay to attend Nora's birthday party. Isabel had recently started working for Byron Bay whale watching tours. "I am totally devastated," Nora said. "We traveled to Australia together only a month ago, and Izzy had planned to stay here for as long as possible. She was such a force of life that it feels impossible to imagine the world without her in it. She was so excited about her new job. It is so unbearably sad and hard to comprehend." The passengers of the other car all suffered injuries, and the driver, Chris Dale, had to be airlifted to the hospital at Baringa. New South Wales police are asking anyone who witnessed the collision to come forward to help with their inquiries. Yeah. "Oh my God," she whispered to herself, feeling faint. "Oh, Izzy." She knew that Izzy wasn't dead in all her lives, or even most of them, but in this one it was real, and the grief Nora felt real too. The grief was familiar and terrifying and laced with guilt. Before she could properly process anything, the mobile rang. It said work, a man's voice, a slow drawl. "Where are you?" "What? You were meant to be here half an hour ago." "Where?" "The ferry terminal. You're selling tickets. I've got the correct number, right? This is Nora Seed I'm talking to?" It's one of them, sighed Nora, as she gently faded away. Fish tank. The shrewd-eyed librarian was back at her chessboard and hardly looked up as Nora arrived back. Well, that was terrible. Oh, that was terrible. Mrs. Elm smiled wryly. It just shows you, doesn't it? Shows me what? Well, that you can choose choices, but not outcomes. But I stand by what I said. It was a good choice. It just wasn't a desired outcome. Nora studied Mrs. Elm's face. Was she enjoying this? Why did I stay? Nora asked. Why didn't I just come home after she died? Mrs. Elm shrugged. You got stuck. You were grieving. You were depressed. You know what depression is like. Nora understood this. She thought of a study she had read about somewhere about fish. Fish were more like humans than most people think. Fish get depression. They had done tests with zebrafish. They had a fish tank and they drew a horizontal line on the side of it, halfway down in marker pen. Depressed fish stayed below the line, but give those same fish Prozac and they go above the line to the top of their tanks, darting about like new. Fish get depressed when they have a lack of stimulation, a lack of everything, when they are just there floating in a tank that resembles nothing at all. Maybe Australia had been her empty fish tank once Izzy had gone. Maybe she just had no incentive to swim above the line. And maybe even Prozac or fluoxetine wasn't enough to help her rise up. She was just going to stay there in that flat with Jojo and never move until she was made to leave the country. Maybe even suicide would have been too active. Maybe in some lives you just float around and expect nothing else and don't even try to change. Maybe that was most lives. Yes, said Nora aloud now. Maybe I got stuck. Maybe in every life I am stuck. I mean, maybe that's just who I am. A starfish in every life is still a starfish. There isn't a life where a starfish is a professor or aerospace engineering. And maybe there isn't a life where I'm not stuck. Well, I think you were wrong. Okay then. I would like to try the life where I am not stuck. What life would that be? Aren't you supposed to tell me? Mrs. Elm moved a queen to take a pawn, then turned the board around. I'm afraid I am just the librarian. Librarians have knowledge. They guide you to the right books, the right worlds. They find the best places, like soul-enhanced search engines. Exactly, but you also have to know what you'd like, what to type into the metaphorical search box. And sometimes you have to try a few things before that becomes clear. I haven't got the stamina. I don't think I can do this. The only way to learn is to live. Yes, so you keep saying. Nora exhaled heavily. It was interesting to know that she could exhale in the library, that she felt entirely in her body, that it felt normal, because this place was definitely not normal, and the real physical her wasn't here. It couldn't be, and yet it was, to all intents and purposes, because she was, in some sense, there, standing on a floor as if gravity still existed. Okay, she said, I would like a life where I am successful. Mrs. Elm tutted disapprovingly. For someone who has read a lot of books, you aren't very specific with your choice of words. Sorry. Success. What does that mean to you? Money? No. Well, maybe. But that wouldn't be the defining feature. Well, then, what is success? Nora had no idea what success was. She had felt like a failure for so long. Mrs. Elm smiled patiently. Would you like to consult again with the Book of Regrets? Would you like to think about those bad decisions that turned you away from whatever you feel success is? Nora shook her head quickly like a dog shaking off water. She didn't want to be confronted with that long, interminable list of mistakes and wrong turns again. She was depressed enough. And besides, she knew her regrets. Regrets don't leave. They weren't mosquito bites. They itch forever. No, they don't, said Mrs. Elm, reading her mind. You don't regret how you were with your cat, and nor do you regret not going to Australia with Izzy. Nora nodded. Mrs. Elm had a point. She thought of swimming in the pool at Bronte Beach. How good that had felt, and its strange familiarity. From an early age you were encouraged to swim, she said Mrs. Elm. Yes. Your dad was always happy to take you to the pool. It was one of the few things that made him happy. Nora mused. She had associated swimming with her father's approval and enjoyed the wordlessness of being in the water because it was the opposite of her parents screaming at each other. Why did you quit? Asked Mrs. Alm. As soon as I started winning swimming races, I became seen, and I didn't want to be seen. And not only seen, but in a swimsuit at the exact age you are self-obsessing about your body. Someone said I had a boy's shoulders. It was a stupid thing, but there are lots of stupid things, and you feel them all at that age. As a teenager, I'd have happily been invisible. People called me the fish. They didn't mean it as a compliment. I was shy. It was one of the reasons why I preferred the library to the playing field. It seems a small thing, but it really helped having that space. Never underestimate the big importance of small things, Mrs. Elm said. You must always remember that. Nora thought back. Her teenage combination of shyness and visibility had been a problematic mix, but she was never bullied as such, probably because everyone knew her brother. And Joe, while never exactly tough, was always considered cool and popular enough for his most immediate blood relation to be immune to schoolyard tyranny. She won races in local and the national championship, She won races in local and the national competitions, but as she reached 15, it became too much. The daily swims, length after length after length. I had to quit. Mrs. Elm nodded, and the bond you developed with your dad frayed and almost snapped completely. Pretty much. She pictured her father's face in the car on a drizzle-scratched Sunday morning outside Bedford Leisure Center as she told him she didn't want to swim in competitions anymore. That look of disappointment and profound frustration. But you can make a success of your life, he had said. Yes, she remembered it now. You're never going to be a pop star, but this is something real. It's right in front of you. If you keep training, you'll end up at the Olympics. I know it. She had been cross with him saying that, as if there was a very thin path to a happy life and it was the path he had decided for her, as if her own agency in her own life was automatically wrong. But what she didn't fully appreciate at 15 years of age was just how bad regret could feel and how much her father had felt that pain of being so near to the realization of a dream he could almost touch it. Nora's father, it was true, had been a difficult man, as well as being highly critical of everything Nora did and everything Nora wanted and everything Nora believed, unless it was related to swimming. Nora had also felt that simply to be in his presence was to commit some kind of invisible crime. Ever since the ligament injury that thwarted his rugby career, he'd had a sincere conviction that the universe was against him. And Nora was, at least she felt, considered by him as part of that same universal plan. From that moment in the car park, she had felt she was really just an extension of the pain in his left knee, a walking wound. But maybe he had known what would happen. Maybe he could foresee the way one regret would lead to another until suddenly that was all she was. A whole book of regrets. Okay, Mrs. Elm. I want to know what happened in the life where I did what my father wanted, where I trained as hard as I possibly could, where I never moaned about a 5 a.m. start or a 9 p.m. finish, where I swam every day and never thought about quitting, where I didn't get sidelined by music or writing unfinished novels, where I sacrificed everything else on the altar of freestyle, where I didn't give up, where I did everything right in order to reach the Olympics. Take me to where I am in that life. For a moment it seemed as though Mrs. Elm hadn't been taking any notice of Nora's mini-speech as she kept frowning at the chessboard, working out how to outmaneuver herself. The rook is my favorite piece, she said. It's the one that you think you don't have to watch out for. It is straightforward. You keep your eye on the queen, and the knights, and the bishop, because they are the sneaky ones. But it's the rook that often gets you. The straightforward is never quite what it seems. Nora realized Mrs. Elm was probably not talking just about chess, but the shelves were moving now, fast as trains. This life you've asked for, explained Mrs. Elm, is a little bit further away from the pub dream and the Australian adventure. There were closer lives. This one involves a lot of different choices, going back further in time, and so the book is a little further anyway. The book is a little further away, you see. I see. Libraries have to have a system. The books slowed. Ah, here we are. This time Mrs. Elm didn't stand up. She simply raised her left hand and a book flew towards her. How did you do that? I have no idea. Now here's the life you asked for. Off you go. Nora took hold of the book. Light, fresh, lime-colored. She turned to the first page. And this time she was aware of feeling absolutely nothing at all. The last update that Nora had posted before she found herself between life and death. I miss my cat. I'm tired. And that is one whole page, just that. The successful life. She had been asleep. A deep, dreamless nothing, and now, thanks to the ring of a phone alarm, she was awake and didn't know where she was. The phone told her it was 6:30 a.m. A light switch beside the bed appeared, thanks to the glow of the screen. Switching it on, she could see she was in a hotel room. It was rather plush, in a bland and blue and corporate kind of way. A tasteful, semi-abstract season? Cezanne. Here we go again. Pronunciation. See, I do my research. I know that there are a lot of... Oh, Cezanne. I see. There are a lot of, like, YouTubers and Twitch people who... I don't mean to seem, like bougie or anything, or, like, better. But, like, I know there are a lot of people who are, like, asking comments and stuff, like, to tell them, like, how things are pronounced or stuff like that. I think in stream it's not so bad. It's not a big deal. Yeah, it's not a big deal when you're streaming and you're, like, live with people, but I know there are people who ask about simple things like that for YouTube videos. And, like... they wait for people in the comments to tell them the answer, and it's like, you can just Google it. Like, I understand for, like, abstract things, or, like, you know, possibly, like, exact moments in history that maybe haven't been written about, you know? But if it's the pronunciation of a word, even a word in, like, another language or something, you can often find the pronunciation online somewhere. Yeah. Those are, like, things that bother me a lot in YouTube. I know that they do it for engagement, because they're like, they'll definitely comment on this, you know? But, like, it feels a little lazy to me. And, yeah. Okay, so Cezanne. Let's see. A tasteful, semi-abstract sub-Cezanne painting of an apple, or maybe a pear, was framed on the wall. There was a half-empty cylinder-shaped glass bottle of still mineral water beside the bed, and an unopened collection of shortbread biscuits. Some printed-out papers, too, stapled together, a timetable of some sort. She looked at it. Itinerary for Nora Seed Obe. OBE. Is it like a... I'm wondering if that's her, like, last name here, or if that's, like, an abbreviation for something, and I'm being silly. But I will read it as Obe right now, and we'll see. Itinerary for Nora Seed Obe, guest speaker, Gulliver Research Inspiring Success, Spring Conference. 8:45 a.m., meet Priya Nuvolari, Gulliver Research, and Rory Longford, celebrity speakers, and Jay in lobby Intercontinental Hotel. 9 o'clock a.m. sound check. 9:05 a.m. tech run-through. 9:30 a.m. Nora to wait in VIP area or watch first speaker in main hall. J.P. Blythe, inventor of MeTime app and author of Your Life, Your Terms. 10:15 a.m. Nora to deliver talk. 10:45 a.m. audience Q&A. 11 a.m. meet and greet. 11:30 a.m. finish. Oh, I see. Nora Seed OBE, as we see here next. It's not OBE. Yeah, it's OBE. It's an abbreviation. Okay. Nora Seed OBE, inspiring success. So there was a life in which she was a success. Well, that was something. She wondered who Jay was and the other people she was supposed to meet in the lobby, and then she put the sheet of paper down and got out of bed. She had a lot of time. Why was she getting up at 6:30 a.m.? Maybe she swam every morning. That would make sense. She pressed a button, and the curtain slid open with a low whir to reveal a view of water and skyscrapers and the white dome of the O2 of the O2 arena. She had never seen this precise view from this precise angle before. London, Canary Wharf, about 20 stories up. She went to the bathroom, beige tiles, large shower cubicle, fluffy white towels, and realized she didn't feel as bad as she usually did in the morning. There was a mirror filling half the opposing wall. She gasped at her appearance, and then she laughed. She looked so ridiculously healthy and strong, and in this life had terrible taste in nightwear, pajamas, mustard, and green plaid. The bathroom was quite large enough to get down on and do some push-ups. 10 full ones in a row, no knees, without even getting out of breath. Then she held a plank and tried it with one hand, then the other hand with hardly a tremor. Then she did some burpees. No problem at all. Wow. She stood up and patted her rock-hard stomach, remembered how wheezy she had been in her route life, walking up the high street, technically only yesterday. She hadn't felt this fit since she was a teenager. In fact, this might be the fittest she had ever felt. Stronger, certainly. She hadn't felt this, sorry, I almost read that again. Searching Facebook for Isabel Hirsch, she found out that her former best friend was alive and still living in Australia, and this made Nora happy. She didn't even care that they weren't social media friends, and it was highly probable that in this life Nora hadn't gone to Bristol University. And even if she had, she wouldn't have been doing the same course. It was a bit humbling to realize that, even though this Isabel Hirsch might have never met Nora Seed, she was still doing the same thing she was doing in Nora's root life. So she also checked on Dan. He was, seemingly, happily married to a spin class instructor named Gina Lord, née Sharp. They'd had a wedding in Sicily. Nora then Googled Nora Seed. Her Wikipedia page, she had a Wikipedia page, informed her that she had indeed made it to the Olympics. Twice. And that she specialized in freestyle. She had won a gold medal for an 800-meter freestyle with a ridiculous time of 8 minutes and 5 seconds, and had a silver for 400 meters. This had been when she was 22 years old. She had won another silver medal when she was 26 for her participation in a 4 times 100-meter relay. It got even more ridiculous when she read that she had briefly been the world record holder for women's 400-meter freestyle at the World Aquatic Championships. She had then retired from international competition. She had retired at 28. She apparently now worked for the BBC during their coverage of swimming events, had appeared on the TV show A Question of Sport, had written an autobiography called Sink or Swim, was an occasional assistant coach at British Swimming GB, and still swam for 2 hours every day. She gave a lot of money to charitable causes, namely to Marie Curie Cancer Care, and she had organized a fundraising charity swimathon around Brighton Pier for the Marine Conservation Society. Since retiring from professional sport, she had swum the channel twice. There was a link to a TED Talk she had given about the value of stamina in sport and training and life. It had over 1 million views. As she began to watch it, Nora felt as though she was watching someone else. This woman was confident, commanded the stage, had great posture, smiled naturally as she spoke, and managed to make the crowd smile and laugh and clap and nod their heads at all the right moments. She had never imagined she could be like this, and tried to memorize what this other Nora was doing, but realized there was no way she would be able to reach it. Or she would be able to. People with stamina aren't made any differently to anyone else, she was saying. The only difference is they have a clear goal in mind and a determination to get there. Stamina is essential to stay focused in a life filled with distraction. It is the ability to stick to a task when your body and mind are at their limit, the ability to keep your head down, swimming in your lane without looking around, worrying who might overtake you. Who the hell was this person? She skipped a little further into the video, and this other Nora was still talking about with the confidence of a self-help Joan of Arc. If you aim to be something you are not, you will always fail. Aim to be you. Aim to look and act and think like you. Aim to be the truest version of you. Embrace that you-ness. Endorse it. Love it. Work hard at it. And don't give a second thought when people mock it or ridicule it. Most gossip is envy in disguise. Keep your head down. Keep your stamina. Keep swimming. Keep swimming, Nora mumbled, echoing her, this other self and wondering if this hotel had a pool. The video disappeared, and a second later her phone started to buzz. A name appeared. Nadia. She didn't know any Nadias in her original life. She had no idea if seeing the name would have inspired this version of her with happy anticipation or sinking dread. There was only one way to find out. Hello? Sweetheart, came a voice she didn't recognize. A voice that was close but not entirely warm. She had an accent, maybe Russian. I hope you are okay. Hi, Nadia. Thanks. I'm fine. I'm just here in the hotel, getting ready for a conference. She tried to sound jolly. Oh yeah, the conference. 15,000 pounds for a talk. Sounds good. It sounded ridiculous, but she also wondered how Nadia, whoever Nadia was, knew this. Oh, yeah, Joe told us. Joe? Yeah. Well, listen, I need to talk to you at some point about your father's birthday. What? I know he'd love it if you could come up and see us. Her whole body went cold and weak, as if she had seen a ghost. She remembered her father's funeral, hugging her brother as they cried on each other's shoulders. My dad? My dad. My dead dad. He's just come in from the garden. Do you want a word with him? This was so remarkable, so world-shattering. It was totally out of sync with her tone of voice. She said it casually, almost as if it was nothing at all. What? Do you want a word with Dad? It took her a moment. She felt suddenly off balance. She could hardly speak. Or breathe. She didn't know what to say. Everything felt unreal. It was like time travel. As though she had fallen through 2 decades. It was too late to respond because the next thing she heard was Nadia saying, "Here he is." Nora nearly hung up the phone. Maybe she should have, but she didn't. Now she knew it was a possibility. She needed to hear now that she knew it was a possibility, she needed to hear his voice again. His breath first, then, "Hi, Nora. How are you?" Just that. Casual, non-specific, every day. It was him. His voice. His strong voice that had always been so clipped, but a little thinner, maybe, a little weaker. A voice 15 years older than it was meant to be. "Dad," she said. Her voice was a stunned whisper. "It's you." "You alright, Nora? Is this a bad line? Do you want to FaceTime?" FaceTime. To see his face. No. That would be too much. This was already too much. Just the idea that there was a version of her dad alive at a time after FaceTime was invented. Her dad belonged to a world of landlines. When he died, he was only just warming to radical concepts like emails and text messages. "No," she said. It was me. I was just thinking of something. I'm a bit distant. Sorry. How are you?" "Fine. We took Sally to the vet yesterday." She assumed Sally was a dog. Her parents had never had a dog, or any pet. Nora had begged for a dog or a cat when she was little, but her dad had always said they tied you down. "What was wrong with her?" Nora asked, trying to sound natural now. "Just her ears. That infection keeps coming back." "Oh, right," she said, as though she knew Sally and her problematic ears. "Poor Sally. I love you, Dad. And I just want to say that... Are you alright, Nora? You're sounding a bit... emotional." "I just don't tell you that enough. I just want you to know I love you. You are a good father. And in another life, the life where I quit swimming, I am full of regret over that." "Nora?" She felt awkward asking him anything, but she had to know. The questions started to burst out of her like water from a geyser. "Are you okay, Dad?" "Why wouldn't I be?" "Just, you used to worry about chest pains. Haven't had them since I got healthy again. That was years ago. You remember, my health kick? Hanging around Olympians does that to you." Got me back to rugby fit. Coming up to 16 years off the drink, too. Cholesterol and blood pressure low, the doc says. Yes, of course. I remember the health kick. And then another question came to her, but she had no idea how to ask it. So she did it directly. How long have you been with Nadia now? Are you having memory problems or something? No. Well, yes, maybe. I've just been thinking a lot about life recently. Are you a philosopher now? Well, I studied it. When? Never mind. I just can't remember how you and Nadia met. She heard an awkward sigh down the phone. He sounded terse. Oh, we met. Why are you bringing all this up? Is this something that therapist is opening up? Because you know my feelings on that. I have a therapist. Sorry, Dad. That's alright. I just want to know that you're happy. Of course I am. I've got an Olympic champion for a daughter and have finally found the love of my life. And you're getting back on your feet again. Mentally, I mean. After Portugal. Nora wanted to know what had happened in Portugal, but she had another question to ask first. What about Mom? Wasn't she the love of your life? Once upon a time she was. But things change, Nora. Come on, you're a grown-up. Nora put her dad on speaker. Clicked back to her own Wikipedia page. Sure enough, her parents had divorced after her father had an affair with Nadia Venko, mother of a Ukrainian male swimmer, Yegor Vanko. And in this timeline, her mother had died way back in 2011. 2011 through 2011, as most people say. And all this because Nora had never sat in that car park in Bedford and told her dad that she didn't want to be a competitive swimmer. She felt that feeling again, like she was fading away, that she'd worked out that this life wasn't for her and was disappearing back into the library. But she stayed where she was. She said goodbye to her dad, ended the phone call, and continued to read up on herself. She was single, though she had been in a relationship with the American Olympic medal winning diver Scott Richards for 3 years, and briefly lived with him in California, where they had resided in La Jolla, San Diego. She now lived in West London. Having read the entire page, she put the phone down and decided to go find out if there was a pool. She wanted to do what she would be doing in this life, and what she would be doing was swimming, and maybe the water would help her think of what she could say. It was an exceptional swim, even if it gave her a little creative inspiration, and it calmed her after the experience of having a conversation with her dead father. She had the pool to herself and glided through length after length of breaststroke without having to think about it. It felt so empowering to be that fit and strong and to have such mastery of the water that she momentarily stopped worrying about her father and having to give a speech she really wasn't prepared for. But as she swam, her mood changed. She thought of those years her dad had gained and her mother had lost, and as she thought, she became angrier and angrier at her father, which fueled her to swim even faster. She had always imagined her parents were too proud to get divorced, so instead let their resentments fester inside, projecting them onto their children, and Nora in particular. And swimming had been her only ticket to approval. Here, in this life she was in now, she had pursued a career to keep him happy, while sacrificing her own relationships, her own love of music, her own dreams beyond anything that didn't involve a medal, her own life. And her father had paid this back by having an affair with this Nadia person and leaving her mother, and he still got terse with her. After all that, screw him, or at least this version of him. As she switched to freestyle, she realized it wasn't her fault that her parents had never been able to love her the way parents were meant to, without condition. It wasn't her fault her mother focused on her every flaw, starting with the asymmetry of her ears. No, it went back even earlier than that. The first problem had been that Nora had dared somehow to arrive into existence at a time when her parents' marriage was relatively fragile. Her mother fell into depression and her father turned to tumblers of single malt. She did 30 more lengths and her mind calmed and she started to feel free, just her and the water. But when she eventually got out of the pool and went back to her room, she dressed in the only clean clothes in her hotel room, smart navy trouser suit, and stared at the inside of her suitcase. She felt the profound loneliness emanating from it. There was a copy of her own book. She was staring out from the cover with steely-eyed determination and wearing a Team GB swimsuit. She picked it up and saw in small print that it was, quote, co-written with Amanda Sands. Amanda Sands, the internet told her, was ghostwriter to a whole host of sporting celebrities. Then she looked at her watch. It was time to head to the lobby. Standing waiting for her were two smartly dressed people she didn't recognize, and one she most definitely did. He was wearing a suit and was clean-shaven in this life, his hair side-parted and businesslike. But he was the same Joe, his dark eyebrows as bushy as ever. "That's the Italian in you," as their mother used to say. Joe? What's more, he was smiling at her, a big, brotherly, uncomplicated smile. "Morning, sis," he said, surprised by and a little awkward from the length of the hug she was giving him. When the hug was over, he introduced the other two people he was standing with. "This is Priya from Gulliver Research, the people organizing the conference, obviously, and this is Rory, obviously, from Celebrity Speakers." "Hi, Priya," said Nora. "Hi, Rory. So nice to meet you." "Yes, it is," said Priya, smiling. "We're so pleased to have you." You say that like we've never met before." "You say that like we've never met before," said Rory with a booming laugh. Nora backtracked. "Yes, I know we've met, Rory. Just my little joke. You know my sense of humor." "You have a sense of humor?" "A good one, Rory." "Okay," her brother said, looking at her and smiling. "Do you want to see the space?" She couldn't stop smiling. Here was her brother whom she hadn't seen in 2 years and had any semblance of a good relationship with in far longer, looking healthy and happy and like he actually liked her. The space? Yeah, the hall. Were you doing the talk? "It's all set up," Priya added helpfully. "Bloody big room," said Rory approvingly as he cradled a paper cup of coffee. So Nora agreed and was led into a vast blue conference room with a wide stage and around 1,000 empty chairs. A technician in black came up and asked her, "What do you fancy? Lapel or headset or handheld?" "Sorry? Well, what kind of mic will you want up there?" "Oh! Headset," her brother interjected on Nora's behalf. "Yeah, headset," said Nora. "I was just thinking," her brother said, "after that nightmare we had with the microphone in Cardiff." "I was just thinking," her brother said, "after that nightmare we had with the microphone in Cardiff." "Yeah, totally. What a nightmare." Priya was smiling at her, wanting to ask something. "Am I right in thinking you've got no multimedia stuff? No slides or anything?" Her brother and Rory were looking at her, a little concerned. This was clearly a question she should know the answer to, and didn't. "Yes," she said, then saw her brother's expression. "I don't. Yes, I don't. I don't have any multimedia stuff." And they all looked at her like she was not quite right, but she smiled through it. We have a chapter here a section here called Peppermint Tea that I was initially planning to stop at, but this is interesting. I think we can keep going for a little longer if you guys would like. I'm just going to take some water while you think about it. Yeah, I'm going to keep going. Okay, alright, I'll keep going. This is very interesting. It's, like, there's certain things that she's not happy with, but, like, overall, it's kind of an okay life. Seemingly, so far. Something's gonna go wrong. I have a feeling that something is gonna go wrong. But, so far, we're doing okay here. Okay. Alright. So, this, I think I just mentioned it, but this section is entitled Peppermint Tea. 10 minutes later, she was sitting on her own with her brother in something called the VIP Business Lounge, which was just a small airless room with some chairs and a table offering a selection of today's newspapers. A couple of middle-aged men in suits were typing things into laptops. By this point, she had worked out that her brother was her manager, and that he'd been her manager for 7 years, since she'd given up professional swimming. "Are you okay about all this?" her brother asked, having just got 2 drinks from the coffee machine. He tore a sachet to release a tea bag. Peppermint. He placed it into the cup of hot water he'd taken from the coffee machine. Then he handed it to Nora. She had never drunk peppermint tea in her life. That's for me? Well, yeah, it was the only herbal they had. He had a coffee for himself that Nora secretly craved. Maybe in this life she didn't drink coffee. Are you okay about all this? Okay about all what? Nora wondered. The talk. Today. Oh, yeah. How long is it again? 40 minutes. Sure. It's a lot of money. I upped it from 10. That's very good of you. Well, I still get my 20%. Hardly a sacrifice. Nora tried to think how she could unlock their shared history, how she could find out why, in this life, they were sitting together and getting along. It might have been money, but her brother had never been particularly money-motivated. And yes, sure, he'd obviously been upset when Nora walked away from the deal with the record company, but that had been because he wanted to play guitar in the Labyrinths for the rest of his life and be a rock star. After dipping it a few times, Nora let the tea bag free in the water. Do you ever think of how our lives could have been different? You know, like, if I had never stuck with swimming? Not really. I mean, what do you think you'd be doing if you weren't my manager? I manage other people too, you know. Well, yeah, of course, I know that, obviously. I suppose I probably wouldn't be managing anyone without you. I mean, you were the first. And you introduced me to Kai and then Natalie, and then Eli, so... She nodded as if she had any idea who Kai and Natalie and Eli were. True, but maybe you'd have found some other way. Who knows? Or maybe I'd still be in Manchester, I don't know. Manchester? Yeah, you remember how much I loved it up there, at uni. It was really hard not to look surprised at any of this, at the fact that this brother she was getting on with, and working with, was also someone who went to university. In her root life, her brother did A-levels and applied to go to Manchester to do history, but he never got the grades he needed, probably because he was too busy getting stoned with Ravi every night, and then decided he didn't want to go to uni at all. They chatted a bit more. At one point, he became distracted by his phone. Nora noticed his screensaver was of a radiant, handsome, smiling man she had never seen before. She noticed her brother's wedding ring and feigned a neutral expression. So, how's married life? Joe smiled. It was a genuinely happy smile. She hadn't seen him smile like that for years. In her root life, Joe had always been unlucky in love. Although she had known her brother was gay since he was a teenager, he hadn't officially come out until he was 22, and he'd never had a happy or long-term relationship. She felt guilt that her life had the power to shape her brother's life in such meaningful ways. Oh, you know, Ewan. Ewan's Ewan. Nora smiled back as if she knew who Ewan was and exactly what it was like. Yeah, he's great. I'm so happy for you both. He laughed. You've been married 5 years now. You're talking as if me and him have just got together. No, I'm just, I sometimes think you're unlucky. I sometimes think that you're lucky, rather. The exact opposite of what I said. So, in love and happy. He wants a dog, he smiled. That's our current debate. I mean, I wouldn't mind a dog, but I'd want a rescue, and I wouldn't want a bloody Maltipoo or a Bichon. I want a wolf. A proper dog. Nora thought of Voltaire. Animals are good company. Yeah. You still want a dog? I do. Or a cat. Cats are too disobedient, he said, sounding like the brother she remembered. Dogs know their place. Disobedience is the true foundation of liberty. The obedient must be slaves. He looked perplexed. Where did that come from? Is that a quote? Yeah, Henry David Thoreau. My favorite philosopher. Since when were you into philosophy? Of course. In this life, she'd never have done a philosophy degree. While her root self had been reading the works of Thoreau and Lao Tzu and Sartre in a stinky student flat in Bristol, her current self had been standing on Olympic podiums in Beijing. Weirdly, she felt just as sad for the version of her who had never fallen in love with the simple beauty of Thoreau's Walden or the stoical meditations of Marcus Aurelius, as she had felt sympathy for the version of her who had never fulfilled her Olympic potential. Oh, I don't know. I just came across some of his stuff on the internet. Huh. Cool. We'll check him out. You could drop some of that into your speech. Nora felt herself go pale. I'm thinking I may be doing something a little different today. I might improvise a little. Improvising was, after all, a skill she'd been practicing. I saw this great documentary about Greenland the other night. Made me remember when you were obsessed with the Arctic and you cut out all those pictures of polar bears and stuff. Yeah, Mrs. Elm said the best way to get to be an Arctic explorer was to be a glaciologist. So that's what I wanted to be. Mrs. Elm, he whispered. That rings a bell. School librarian. That was it. You used to live in that library, didn't you? Pretty much. Just think, if you hadn't stuck with swimming, you'd be in Greenland right now. Svalbard, she said. Sorry? It's a Norwegian archipelago. Way up in the Arctic Ocean. Okay, Norway then. You'd be there. Maybe. Or maybe I'd just still be in Bedford. Whipping around. Unemployed. Struggling to pay the rent. Don't be daft. You'd have always done something big. She smiled at her elder brother's innocence. In some lives, me and you might not even get on. Nonsense. I hope so. Joe seemed a bit uncomfortable and clearly wanted to change the topic. Hey, guess who I saw the other day? Nora shrugged, hoping it was going to be someone she'd heard of. Ravi. Do you remember Ravi? She thought of Ravi telling her off in the newsagents only yesterday. Oh, yeah. Ravi. Well, I bumped into him. In Bedford? Ha! God, no. Haven't been there for years. No, it was a Blackfriars station. Totally random. A Blackfriars station, rather. Totally random. Like, I haven't seen him in over a decade. At least. He wanted to go to the pub. So I explained I was teetotal now, and then I got into having to explain I'd been an alcoholic. And all of that. That I hadn't had a glass of wine or a puff on a joint in years. Nora nodded as if this wasn't a bombshell. Since I got into a mess after Mum died. I think he was like, who is this guy? But he was fine. He was cool. He's working as a cameraman now. Still doing some music on the side. Not rock stuff. DJing, apparently. Remember that band me and him had years ago? The Labyrinths? It was becoming easier to fake vagueness. Oh, yeah. The Labyrinths. Of course. Oh, that's a blast from the past. Wait. Hold on. What are you saying that to? Because I missed that before. Sorry. About something happening in Portugal. I'm looking to see, like, what I might have been talking about. And I... Oh, okay. Alright. I didn't realize it was so close to that. Yeah. That's true. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Yeah, got the sense he pines for those days, even though we were crap and I couldn't sing. What about you? Do you ever think about what could have been if the Labyrinths had made it big? He laughed a little sadly. I don't know if anything could have been. Maybe you needed an extra person. I used to play those keyboards Mom and Dad got you. Did you? When did you have the time for that? A life without music. A life without reading the books she had loved. But also, a life where she got on with her brother. A life where she had to let him down. Anyway, Ravi wanted to say hi, and wanted to catch up. He only works one tube stop away. So he's going to try and come to the talk. What? Oh, that's... I wish he wouldn't. Why? I just never really liked him. Joe frowned. Really? I can't remember you saying that. He's okay. A good guy. Bit of a waster, maybe, back in the day, but he seems to have got his act together a bit. Nora was unsettled. Joe? Yeah? You know, when Mum died? Yeah? Where was I? What do you mean? Are you okay today, sis? Are the new tablets working? Tablets? She checked in her bag and started to rummage. Saw a small box of antidepressants in her bag. Her heart sank. I just wanted to know. Did I see much of Mum before she died? Joe frowned. He was still the same Joe, still unable to read his sister, still wanting to escape reality. You know we weren't there. It happened so fast. She didn't tell us how ill she was. To protect us. Or maybe because she didn't want us to tell her to stop drinking. Drinking? Mom was drinking? Joe's worry increased. Sis, have you got amnesia? She was on a bottle of gin every day since Nadia came onto the scene. Yeah, of course. I remember. Plus, you had the European Championships coming up, and she didn't want to interfere with that. Jesus. I should have been there. One of us should have been there, Joe. We both... His expression frosted suddenly. You were never that close with Mom, were you? Why this sudden... I got closer to her. I mean, I would have. You're freaking me out. You're acting not quite yourself. Nora nodded. Yes, I think you're right. I think it's just the tablets. She remembered her mother in her final months saying, I don't know what I would have done without you. She'd probably said it to Joe, too. But in this life, she'd had neither of them. Then Priya arrived into the room, grinning, clutching her phone, some kind of clipboard. It's time! The tree that is our life. 5 minutes later, Nora was back in the hotel's vast conference room. At least 1,000 people were watching in the first speaker conclude her presentation, the author of Zero to Hero. The book Dan had beside his bed in another life. But Nora wasn't really listening as she sat in her reserved seat in the front row. She was too upset about her mother, too nervous about the speech. So she just picked up the odd word or phrase that floated into her mind like croutons and minestrone. Little known fact, ambition, what you may be surprised to hear is that, if I can do it, hard knocks. It was hard to breathe in this room. It smelled of musky perfume and new carpet. She tried to stay calm. Leaning into her brother, she whispered, I don't think I can do this. What? I think I'm having a panic attack. He looked at her, smiling, but with a toughness in his eyes that she remembered from a different life, when she'd had a panic attack before one of their early gigs with the Labyrinths at a pub in Bedford. You'll be fine. I don't know if I can do this. I've gone blank. You're overthinking it. I have anxiety. I have no other type of thinking available. Come on. Don't let us down. Don't let us down. But she tried to think of music. Thinking of music had always calmed her down. A tune came to her. She was slightly embarrassed, even within herself, to realize that the song in her head was Beautiful Sky, a happy, hopeful song that she hadn't sung in a long time. The sky grows dark, the black over blue, yet the stars still dare to shine for... But then the person Nora was sitting next to, a smartly dressed businesswoman in her 50s and the source of the musky perfume smell, leaned in and whispered, I'm so sorry about what happened to you. You know, the stuff in Portugal. What stuff? The woman's reply was drowned out as the audience erupted into applause at that moment. What? She asked again. But it was too late. Nora was being beckoned towards the stage and her brother was elbowing her. Her brother's voice bellowing almost, They want you. Off you go. She headed tentatively towards the lectern on the stage, towards her own huge face smiling out triumphantly, golden medal around her neck, projected on the screen behind her. She'd always hated being watched. Hello, she said nervously into the microphone. It is very nice to be here today. 1,000 or so faces stared, waiting. She had never spoken to so many people simultaneously. Even when she had been in the Labyrinths, they had never played a gig for more than 100 people, and back then she kept the talking between the songs to as minimal as possible. Working at String Theory, although she was perfectly okay talking with customers, she rarely spoke up in its staff meetings, even though there had never been more than 5 people in the room. Back at university, while Izzy always breezed through presentations, Nora would worry about them for weeks in advance. Sorry, I'm shifting a little. Joe and Rory were staring at her with baffled expressions. The Nora she had seen in the TED Talks was not this Nora, and she doubted she could ever become that person. Not without having done all that she had done. Hello, my name is Nora Seed. She hadn't meant to be funny about the whole, but the whole room laughed at this. There had clearly been no need to introduce herself. Life is strange, she said, how we live it all at once, in a straight line. But really that's not the whole picture. Because life isn't simply made of the things we do, but the things we don't do too. And every moment of our life is a kind of turning. Still nothing. Think about it. Think about how we start off as this set thing, like the seed of a tree planted in the ground. And then we grow. We grow, and at first we are a trunk. Absolutely nothing. But then the tree that is our life develops branches, and think of all those branches departing from the trunk at different heights, and think of all those branches branching off again, heading in opposing directions. Think of those branches becoming other branches, and those becoming twigs, and think of the end of each of those twigs, all in different places, having started from the same one. A life is like that, but on a bigger scale. New branches are formed every second of every day, and from our perspective, from everyone's perspective, it feels like a continuum. Each twig has traveled only one journey, but there were still other twigs, and there were also other todays, other lives that would have been different if you'd taken different directions earlier in your life. This is a tree of life. Lots of religions and mythologies have talked about the tree of life. It's there in Buddhism, Judaism, and Christianity. Lots of philosophers and writers have talked about tree metaphors too. For Sylvia Plath, existence was a fig tree, and each possible life she could live, the happily married one, the successful poet one, was a sweet, juicy fig, but she couldn't get to taste the sweet, juicy figs, and so they just rotted right in front of her. It could drive you insane thinking of all the other lives we don't live. For instance, in most of my lives, I am not standing at this podium talking to you about success. In most of my lives, I am not an Olympic gold medalist. She remembered something Mrs. Elm had told her in the Midnight Library. You see, doing one thing differently is very often the same as doing everything differently. Actions can't be reversed within a lifetime, however much we try. People were listening now. They clearly needed a Miss Elm in their lives. The only way to learn is to live. And she went on in this manner for another 20 minutes, remembering as much as possible of what Mrs. Elm had told her, and then she looked down at her hands, glowing white from the light of the lectern. As she absorbed the sight of a raised, thin, pink line of flesh, she knew the scar was self-inflicted, and it put her off of her flow, or rather, put her into a new one. And the thing is, what we consider to be the most successful route for us to take actually isn't. Because too often our view of success is about some external bullshit idea of achievement, an Olympic medal, the ideal husband, a good salary. And we have all these metrics that we try to reach, when really success isn't something you measure, and life isn't a race you can win. It's all bollocks, actually. The audience definitely looked uncomfortable now. Clearly this was not the speech they were expecting. She scanned the crowd and saw a single face smiling up at her. It took a second, given the fact that he was smartly dressed in a blue cotton shirt with hair far shorter than it was in his Bedford life, for her to realize it was Ravi. This Ravi looked friendly, but she couldn't shake the knowledge of the other Ravi, the one who had stormed out of the newsagents, sulking about not being able to afford a magazine and blaming her for it. You see, I know that you were expecting my TED Talk on the path to success, but the truth is that success is a delusion. It's all a delusion. I mean, yes, there are things we can overcome. For instance, I am someone who gets stage fright, and yet here I am on a stage. Look at me, on a stage. And someone told me recently, they told me that my problem isn't actually stage fright. My problem is life fright. And you know what? They're fucking right. Because life is frightening, and it is frightening for a reason, and the reason is that it doesn't matter which branch of a life we get to live, we are always the same rotten tree. I wanted to be many things in my life. All kinds of things. But if your life is rotten, it will be rotten no matter what you do. The damp rots the whole useless thing. Joe was desperately slicing his hand in the air around his neck, making a cut-it gesture. Anyway, just be kind, and just be kind. I have a feeling I'm about to go, so I would just like to say I love my brother Joe. I love you, brother, and I love everyone in this room, and it was very nice to be here. And the moment she said it was nice to be there was also the moment she wasn't there at all. Ugh. Okay, we are... Should we keep going or should we stop here for now? Yeah, I know, right? I felt that switch up. Like, as I was reading through it, like, you could tell the exact moment that things flipped. I know, I'm really interested to keep going too. But it might be a good time to stop and discuss. Depends how you feel. I do want to say, so actually, funnily enough, wait, no, we're not. I was going to say we're halfway through the book. We're not there yet. 144 is when we're halfway through the book. This is 114. So not quite yet. Once we do get halfway through the book, what I will want to do is actually start asking you guys for suggestions for the next book to read. And yeah, we're not there yet, but you guys can start thinking about that if you want. I'll also make posts regarding it too. But I can keep going if you'd like me to keep going for like another chapter. I can do that. Just let me know what you think. Not a chapter, a section. Stephen King is scary, though. I'm not a huge fan of scary. We're like a fan of scary. I'm not a fan of scary. I can write scary. I can watch sometimes in the right atmosphere, which means not on a dark and stormy night, with the lights absolutely on, and mostly probably like the ability to scroll or look away from the screen. I can watch scary things. But I don't, but yeah, spooky is not for me. Especially reading spooky things. Yeah, if you'd like me to, I can read. So, there's a little bit more of this section here, and then I can stop before we go into the next, thingy. I'll read this next section, and we'll stop there. Yeah, I'll read the section, and then we'll just stop after this one. System error. She arrived back in the midnight library, but this time she was a little away from the bookshelves. This was the loosely defined office area she'd glimpsed earlier in one of the broader corridors. The desk was covered with administrative trays, barely containing scattered piles of papers and boxes, and the computer. The computer was a really old-fashioned-looking, cream-colored, boxy one on the desk up by the papers. The kind that Mrs. Elm would once have had in her school library. She was at the keyboard now, typing with urgency, staring at the monitor as Nora stood behind her. The lights above, the same bare light bulbs hanging down from wires, were flickering wildly. My dad was alive because of me. But he'd also had an affair, and my mum died earlier, and I got on with my brother because I had never let him down, but he was still the same brother, really, and he was only really okay with me in that life because I was helping him make money, and it wasn't the Olympic dream I had imagined. It was the same me, and something had happened in Portugal, I'd probably try to kill myself or something. Are there any other lives at all, or is it just like the furnishings that change? But Mrs. Elm wasn't listening. Nora noticed something on the desk, an old plastic orange fountain pen, the same exact kind that Nora had once owned at school. Hello? Mrs. Elm, can you hear me? Something was wrong. The librarian's face was tight with worry. She read from the screen to herself. System error. Mrs. Elm? Hello? Yoo-hoo! Can you see me? She tapped her shoulder. That seemed to do it. Mrs. Elm's face broke out in a massive relief as she turned away from the computer. Oh, Nora, you got here? Were you expecting me not to? Did you think that life would be the one I want? Did you think that life that was? Did you think that life would be the one I wanted to live? She shook her head without really moving it. If that was possible. No, it's not that. It just looked like it looked. It's just that it looked fragile. What looked fragile? The transfer. Transfer? From the book to here, the life you chose to here. It seems there was a problem with the whole system, something beyond my immediate control, something external. You mean in my actual life? She stared back at the screen. Yes. You see, the Midnight Library only exists because you do, in your root life. So, I'm dying? Mrs. Elm looked exasperated. It's a possibility. That is to say, it's a possibility that we are reaching the end of possibility. Nora thought of how good it had felt swimming in the pool, how vital and alive. Then something happened inside her. A strange feeling, a pull in her stomach, a physical shift, a change in her. The idea of death suddenly troubled her. At that same time, the light stopped flickering overhead and shone brightly. Mrs. Elm clapped her hands as she absorbed new information on this computer screen. Oh, it's back. That's good. The glitch is gone. We are running again. Thanks, I believe. To you. What? Well, the computer says the root cause within the host has been temporarily fixed. And you are the root cause. You are the host. She smiled. Nora blinked, and when she opened her eyes, both she and Mrs. Elm were standing in a different part of the library, between stacks of bookshelves again, standing stiffly, awkwardly, facing each other. Right, now settle, said Mrs. Elm before releasing a deep sigh, a deep and meaningful exhale. She was clearly talking to herself. My mom died on different dates and different lives. I'd like a life where she is still here. Does that exist? Mrs. Elm's attention switched to Nora. Maybe it does. Great, but you can't get there. Why not? Because this library is about your decisions. There is no choice you could have made that led to her being alive beyond yesterday. I'm sorry. A light bulb flickered above Nora's head, but the rest of the library stayed as it was. You need to think about something else, Nora. What was good about the last life? Nora nodded. Swimming. I liked swimming, but I don't think I was happy in that life. I don't know if I'm truly happy in any life. Is happiness the aim? I don't know. I suppose I want my life to mean something. I want to do something good. You once wanted to be a glaciologist, Mrs. Elm appeared to remember. Yeah, we used to talk about it. You said you were interested in the Arctic, so I suggested you become a glaciologist. I remember. I liked the sound of it straight away. My mom and dad never liked the idea, though. Why? I don't really know. They encouraged swimming. Well, Dad did. But anything that involved academic work, they were funny about. Nora felt a deep sadness down in her stomach. From her arrival into life, she was considered by her parents in a different way to her brother. Other than swimming, Joe was the one expected to pursue things. She told Mrs. Elm. My mom put me off anything that could take me away. Unlike Dad, she didn't even push me to swim. But surely there must be a life where I didn't listen to my mom and where I am now an Arctic researcher, far away from everything, with a purpose, helping the planet, researching the impact of climate change, on the front line. So you want me to find that life for you? Nora sighed. She still had no idea what she wanted. But at least the Arctic Circle would be different. All right. Yes. And that's where we'll end for today. The next section is going to be called Svalbard. Let us talk. What stood out to you guys? What do you want to discuss? Yeah, that was interesting that she now has a very clear feeling on it. It's very interesting because her relationship with her parents, like, is complex, like it would be in reality. They don't have the healthiest interactions with her or the healthiest way of treating her. But she still loves them, even if in some ways she resents them. And wants them to be okay. It was interesting to hear her feelings on, like, her dad and stuff, because, like, she was both happy he was around and then was also quite angry with him for the decisions he had made. And I don't blame her. Like, I don't blame her for the past stuff either, but especially for cheating on her mother and then, like, inadvertently causing her mother's death. Like, I just like how it's all written very realistically in that regard. And it's also, like, very clear that everyone is going through their own issues of depression and stuff. And I think she's realizing that a lot of the stuff that she's going through, it sucks, but is kind of put on her by other people, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of the stuff that she's been upset about has kind of been stuff that other people have been, like, upset about and, like, taking out blame on her unfairly. And she's just internalized that stuff. Yeah. But, yeah, also, like, I feel like that's also realistic, too, that taking the negativity sort of aimed at you, like, people taking out inner frustrations and stuff on you, and then internalizing that and blaming yourself for it or making yourself more responsible than you actually are. Yeah, I liked your speech too, even when it was like, even when it was going wrong. Any advice for falling asleep when you read? I mean, so I think one of the reasons why you might be falling asleep when you read is, by the way, first of all, thank you for joining. But also I think one of the reasons that we fall asleep sometimes or get sleepy when we read is this idea of kind of being overwhelmed at the idea of the task of reading. And, like, okay, you set, like, these goals for yourself. I have to get this far, and suddenly it seems really daunting when you pick it up. Is that maybe something that's happening for you? Because then I'd say just alter your goals. Like, be like, you know what, let me get through this page and see how I am. That too. That can happen too. Sometimes it just relaxes you a lot, which I think it's a matter of them recontextualizing. I've had that too. I've totally had that. It could just be like, you know, one, it could be you're not in the right mood to read. Is it like, yeah. I've definitely had that too, where I read so much in high school and in school, and then, like, now it's like I don't read books much anymore. That's part of what we're doing here, honestly. I feel like this will help. Maybe. I think that this will help, like, by making it more of a communal experience. I find that it actually helps, or is helping me get back into reading. I definitely think that there can be an argument made for, like, the medium. Some people, like, they don't work well with physical books. You know? Like, I love physical books, like the paper and the flipping of the pages and stuff like that, but some people read better from a screen. Like, if you have a tablet or a Kindle or something, that counts too. And some people do better with, like, audiobooks as well, which I would think that counts as well. Yeah, like Kay's is saying. But it definitely could be a thing of, like, too much screen time. I think we just kind of have to, like, adapt with circumstances. So if you find that that's how you are with things, then try to find another way around it if you really want to be doing that reading, you know? I get it. I totally get it. Honestly, it is really hard for me to read books when I'm on my own. For whatever reason. I don't know, like, it's hard for me to push myself to start, is the main thing. Because my brain's like, I could be doing something else. I should be doing something else. I totally get it right. I totally get that. I don't think that there's... I do... Sorry, I'm trying to turn on my air conditioner because it's warm in here. You know, like, I totally get that, but again, I think it has to do with, like, since the solution involves adjusting to our current situation, I think, and not getting hard on ourselves about certain things. I feel like something that could have caused us to read more easily back in school, I don't know if this is the reading you mean, or if you just read, like, for leisure as well, but, like, the fact that it was with a deadline and was being mandated also is a factor. You know? Because if you're saying you have to read this, or you'll be in trouble if you don't read it, or you're going to be quizzed on this and it's going to count towards your grade, that turns things, that, like, changes the context of things. Okay, but listen, though. Like, I've talked about this. For university, they genuinely just assign way too much reading. There is, like, no way to actually fully read everything that they assign. It sucks, because I know that you're like, I'm paying for this. I need to be, like, giving all of my attention. But it's difficult to do that. Aw. Don't be so hard on yourself, though. It could just be that the reading is not appealing to you. It could be the voice of the reader. I mean, I've had that where it's like... First of all, there are a lot more people who have ADHD than realize, honestly. I mean, I don't think, you know... I think that's something that a lot of people deal with that goes actually undiagnosed. Yeah, it can be. It definitely can be. Totally. It definitely, like, source and, like, subject matter is a factor in things. I can't, like, there's certain things that I've tried to read, even leisurely, that, like, the voice is just so dry, I can't do it. Like, not leisurely, but literature, when I was in school and reading and having to do, like, 18th century literature, cannot do it. Like, you hear about, or even, okay, here's a great example, Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde sounds like a great story. When you've seen adaptations of Jekyll and Hyde, or, like, portrayed in anything, it sounds so interesting. But if you actually try to read Jekyll and Hyde, you will find that it is so boring. It is so hard to get through. It all deals with, like, the portrayal of it. It totally has to do with the writer's voice. You know, how it's written. Aside from, like, the subject matter and how something is written, they're actually two completely different things. You can find, I feel like, you know, I don't know that I've necessarily come across it, but I will say that I think it's possible to find some subject matter that is really dry. Like, the subject matter is not very interesting, but the writer puts it in such a way that it will be entertaining. Likewise, I know that there is exciting subject matter where it's like, there's no way that this could be boring, and there are writers who are so droll that no matter how interesting the subject matter, they will find a way to make it boring. So totally, like, writer's voice and stuff, like, and subject matter and writer's voice, they're both very important with that. So absolutely, I once read up on and watched some stuff on procrastination because I was dealing with heavy, like, I could not concentrate. It was during university for me, and I could not concentrate, and I'm like, why do I keep wanting to do literally everything, even things that, like, I haven't wanted to do in so long, but not the thing that I'm supposed to be doing? And it's just like your brain, you know, I feel like your brain likes what it likes. And your brain can like the idea of something, like the subject matter, the scientific subject matter, but the way that it's written is just not appealing. So it's like, we do not want to be doing this. See, I know yeah. Hey, look. I mean, that's what happens. It's like, again, your focus just will jump. If it knows that it's your brain is just not interested in something, it's like, why are we wasting time with this? Like, deep down, you know, we don't, like, the primitive brain does not understand we need this for school. It just understands this is boring. We could be doing so much more with our time. Here's all the things that we could be doing in this time. It's hard though. It is the id. You know, it is the like, foundation of things. That's always gonna have a lot of weight. Gotta turn on that super ego. Love the psychology talk. But yeah, absolutely. But, like, again, that's one of the reasons why I started doing this, because I wanted to read more, and I was just finding that I couldn't pick up a book. It was so hard to, like, actually push myself to read because of that inner voice telling me I need to do, you know, I need to be doing something else with my time. This is wasting time. And I figured turning it into a group experience where I might be helping people if they have been having the same issue and stuff, like, it just makes me feel better about it and makes it possible, so. Oh, thank you. It's genuinely, for me, it's that. It's making it into a group experience, because I really don't do this at other times. I'm doing, like, so I do the games here, which are visual novels, and then I do this here, and I'm also doing another visual novel as well with another group of people, like a group of people. And it's, putting it like that is insane. Like, I don't think that I read particularly a super amount, but when I think about it like that, yeah. And honestly, it's all thanks to doing it with a group of people. So I think if you turn it into a community experience, it might help. Talking maybe with, like, if it's school reading, maybe talking with classmates after the fact, or having that in your mind. Yeah. So I'm happy to help if I did. No problem. Thank you for coming in. And thank you for chatting, absolutely. I'm always happy to see new people. Do we have anything else that you guys wanted to bring up from the portion that we read today? I'm really excited to see where we go next. Oh, thank you so much for the follow. If you'd like to catch up, by the way, I have videos of the past chat sections on my YouTube channel, which is the same username as here. And I also have past Hot Tub Boyfriend videos as well. Yeah, I need it's probably a widget that I have to add in. I need to take the time to look through those again. I would love to do that with, like, some cute little something or other that hopefully doesn't become, like, annoying or anything. Yeah. Yeah. I'll get there. I'll get there. Just gotta be patient. Oh, yes, please. I would love to. We'll need to find a time to actually to sort that out, and yeah, we'll figure that out. I was really excited. Anyway, though, I think that might be a good stopping point for today, as long as we don't have anything else to discuss. Yeah, me too. And I think that will be it for now. So thank you so much for watching and for chatting. I hope you guys enjoyed what we read this time. We'll be back again next week, so Saturday for Hot Tub Boyfriend at 5 o'clock. And then again on Sunday at 5 o'clock for more Quoth the Author. Thank you so much. Go ahead and also check out the YouTube channel where I'm posting, yes, definitely slightly less depressing. Slightly less depressing. We're getting better. Yeah, so please go ahead and check out the YouTube channel where we have replay videos from previous weeks of both Quoth the Author and Hot Tub Boyfriend. Go ahead and check that out. Go ahead and comment, like, and subscribe, and hit that little bell to be notified for more updates. Thank you again for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Have a great evening, and this has been Sky. Bye-bye.